Over the last few decades, technology has radically changed the way we live. But the way we drive hasn't really changed at all. The internal combustion engine was invented back in the 19th century, and our cars have used this same basic technology for well over 100 years. But now, there's something coming down the road that's long overdue. A technological and environmental revolution. Burning petrol to get around is no longer sustainable, so switching to electric cars has never been more urgent. Electric vehicles are a vital weapon in the battle against climate breakdown. Here in Ireland, we aren't anywhere close to achieving our target of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And that means we could be hit with a bill from Europe of up to €500 million. The cost of petrol and diesel has been static for a while, but fuel prices are likely to rise. So for the health of our planet and of our pockets, is it time to go electric? Electric trams ran on our capital's streets 100 years ago, and reviving the electric tram has made Dublin a cleaner, more pleasant place. But electric cars are still lagging behind, and that's a problem, because even the cleanest diesel engine is still poisonous. As a doctor, I've read the studies that show that nearly 1,500 people die from air pollution in Ireland every year. And particulates from exhaust fumes are a major air pollutant. And of course, all fossil fuel-powered cars impact our climate by turning hydrocarbons into carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gas. Back when the original electric trams were popular, electric cars were popular too. In 1900, almost 1/3 of cars on the road were battery-powered. But after a promising start, the electric car pretty much disappeared, and the car industry were happy to stick with what they knew, petrol and diesel engines, and all the environmental damage that came with them. But then an outsider came along and shocked the car industry into upping their game. Tesla's Model S brought serious style and performance to the world of electric vehicles, a world that had previously been, well, a bit lame. There's no denying that Teslas look fantastic, and with their huge batteries and network of fast chargers, they're still the best electric car on the market. But buying the Model X is going to set you back serious money. They begin at over €100,000, so for most of us, this puts Tesla well out of our reach. Many of us want to change to an electric car, but are put off by the price tag. Accountant Ken Smith sat down and looked carefully at the numbers before making his decision. So Ken, you've just recently bought an electric car. Can you tell me why you did this?
The simple reason is I actually needed to replace my own car, and I looked into, well, what was going to cost more, whether it was going to be petrol, diesel or electric. I do about 80 kilometres a day in total, and this just worked out with the sums, as simple as that.
How much will you actually save with this car?
Well, I used to spend about 55 to 60 euros on diesel a week. If I go night rate with this, as in electricity at night, it'll end up being about €7.50 a week for 500 kilometres a week.
And what are some of the long-term savings compared to your diesel car?
Well, the long-term savings is that basically $2,500 in diesel cost a year, multiplied by at least 5 years. The car's still got a value at the end of that 5 years. And in my case, I had a diesel that was 2.2 litre 07, which is on the old tax rate. So it was nearly £1,000 in tax versus 120 now. So it was even more. It was almost about 3,000 plus.
So if you keep that car for 5 years?
I'll pay for it about half of the price of the car.
In only 5 years?
In only 5 years.
Ken, what would you say to someone who's thinking of going electric?
I would say to them, firstly, do they have a driveway to charge it? And secondly, test drive it. if you enjoy it, go for it.
Tell me a little bit about range anxiety. It's everybody's biggest issue. Do you get it?
I'm going to be honest, I don't get it. Because firstly, I'm only doing 80 kilometres. It can do 240, no problem. But for my position, it absolutely, it's 100%. It's a no-brainer for me to use an electric car. For a full charge from 0 to 100 in this overnight would take about 6.5 hours.
At home?
At home. I have it set up that the car only turns on the charger after 12 o'clock at night and finishes before 8, no matter what.
Did you ever forget to plug it in at night?
Yes, only once. The car hilariously will actually, through its app, though, tell you that you can set your home where it is, and you can tell it that if you do not plug in when I'm at home, remind me. And you can set the time, whether it's 15 minutes or an hour, and it will actually notify you.
And did it notify you?
It notified me.
And so you went out and you plugged it in?
And I went out and plugged it in.
Oh my God, this car is smarter than I am. Ken is delighted with his electric car. And since he expects it to save him €15,000 over the next 5 years, I can see why. Everyone says the only way to really understand an electric vehicle is to drive one. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've got myself a loan of this car for a few weeks. It's the Volkswagen e-Golf, so it's the fully electrified version of one of the country's most popular cars. The e-Golf has an electric motor that delivers around 134 horsepower with bags of acceleration. And it differs from a normal Golf in another important way. Unlike your petrol or diesel automatics, which automatically change gears for you, this car doesn't even need gears, which means that it's much easier and cheaper to maintain. And it's a lot of fun to drive. I work as a doctor in a few different hospitals, so I do about 150 kilometres of driving each week. The car is cheap to run, and it feels great to be able to drive without leaving a trail of pollution in my wake. The car is perfect, except for one slight problem. My house doesn't really have a usable driveway, so installing a charge point isn't easy. For the people who have this problem, they usually just charge at work. But none of the places I work have a charger. The e-Golf has a 36 kilowatt battery. This gives it a range of over 200 kilometres. But after a couple of days, I need to recharge it using the public charging network. But though there are 1,200 charge points around the country, this network leaves a lot to be desired. This is the 5th charger that I've tried today. The first 2 were out of order. The 3rd one was occupied even though the app said it was free, and the 4th one was again broken. And even when I get here, one of these 2 is out of order, but one of them is working, so it means I can plug in. I do think the network needs a little bit of TLC. ESB have announced that the car charging infrastructure is getting a €20 million overhaul, installing 100 new super-fast chargers, which can add 100 kilometres of range to a car in 6 minutes. Time will tell if this will be enough. It hasn't helped matters that workplaces, shopping centres and other destinations have generally been slow to install electric car chargers. There are a few exceptions, like Kildare Village, where a community of EV owners have gathered for a Sunday meetup. Circa O'Neill from Naas and her husband traded in their 2 diesel cars for one new Renault Zoe. And how long will it take to charge it overnight?
A full charge, because we've a 3 kilowatt charger at home, and a full charge for 300 kilometre range would be about 13 hours.
Okay.
But we got a night meter in as well, so that worked out really well for us. So we actually don't plug it in till after 10 o'clock, maybe 12 o'clock. So it actually is cheap as chips to run, and in terms of tax, and it's fantastic, much more economical for us, and they're such a pleasure to drive as well. They're like zippy, it's like we call her Zippy Zoe. The feel-good factor of knowing that it's not harming the environment, and that I look at the diesel engines and I see the smoke coming out, and I'm kind of going, oh gosh, and I want to reach out to them saying, there's a better way.
So this is a pre-owned Renault Zoe. What year is it?
That's right. This is a late 2014 car, so it's just over 4 years old. And this car's just under €8,000, plus the monthly battery lease on this car, which is from €59 a month.
It's kind of phenomenal. I suppose everybody thinks that you're getting a new car, you're going to be paying 25, 30,000, but this is 4 years old and it's not even €10,000.
Do you want to sit inside there?
Well, of course I do.
Yeah, get inside. It's a cold day.
Brilliant. Look at this.
If you think about a normal engine in a petrol or diesel car, there are hundreds of moving parts and all of those things eventually will wear out. Whereas in these cars, there are very few things that wear.
Bob, is now the time to buy electric?
Now is probably the best time. We have all the grants in place. I do own a petrol car, and I didn't want to buy in straight away into electric car range because the range keeps changing so quickly. We've gone from, say, the first Nissan Leaf with 100 kilometres range to now 450 kilometres range in 4 to 6 years.
And if the range is very long, the infrastructure doesn't actually matter as much, surely?
No, it's not as critical. As battery technology moves on, as supply improves, as we try and get better sources for lithium-ion and everything else that we're putting into the batteries, that sort of stuff, that all needs to improve as well. And once that improves, and once we get a proper infrastructure going, there's no need to go back.
Though electric car sales are growing and their owners all seem very happy with them, EVs still account for a tiny fraction of new cars bought every year. Why is it that people aren't buying them?
I think there's a lot of misperceptions out there around electric vehicles. So we recently did some survey work and we asked, how many people had actually ever been in an electric vehicle, and something like 88% of people said they've never actually driven an EV before. If you can just get someone in behind the wheel of a car and have a test drive, that's really, really impactful. So that's something that SEI has been working on now through our website, drivingelectric.ie. So you can go on there and you can book a test drive with your local dealer. Once they do that, they realize, hey, this is a great car, it's zippy, it has all of the modern features, and it has all the added benefits of saving fuel costs and tackling climate change.
And within around a decade, if you want a new car, it has to be an electric vehicle. Isn't that what we're hoping for?
Right, that's right. I mean, Toyota's already come out and said publicly, look, diesel is dead. They're not making diesel cars after 2019 anymore for Europe. And this is a long-term commitment that we know all European countries are moving towards, which is no more diesel cars, no more petrol cars. So this is something that's coming down the line.
So diesel and petrol are on the brink of being things of the past. But what will the future of electric cars look like? That's what I'll be finding out next. Electric car sales are on the rise, but they're still not at the level that they should be. And range anxiety is a real concern for potential owners. Anyone with a smartphone knows what it's like to run out of battery just when you need it the most. But there is a cure for range anxiety. Better batteries that charge faster and have a higher capacity. Half of the cost of a new electric car is the battery. So improving battery performance is key to making electric cars affordable to everyone in the future. Professor Valeria Nicolosi runs a lab in the School of Chemistry here in Trinity College. They're producing the next generation of batteries for phones, laptops and electric vehicles.
Here we work on batteries and supercapacitors. So these are devices that are capable of storing energy and then releasing it whenever you need it. So these are two very, very complementary types of technologies. Batteries would typically store more energy, but be very, very slow at releasing it. And typically their lifetime would actually be rather dreadful, let's say. That's what we are used to with our batteries. Supercapacitors, on the other hand, will store less energy, but they're capable of being charged way more quickly, and their lifetime is longer. So what we are trying to do is just raise the performance of both these devices.
That's amazing. So, I mean, it's all the things that are important. Increase the capacity and make sure that they charge faster and discharge faster when you need them to.
Absolutely. Here we test coin cell batteries, for example, is the very, very first step. We actually have them in watches and in all very small appliances. And what we do is inside coin cells, we test new compositions of nanomaterials. Nanomaterials are our solution to energy storage.
To me, this just looks like
Yeah.
a standard battery. What is the difference?
So the difference is what we actually put inside. We use what we call inks of nanomaterials. This is one of our magic recipes here. So we have nanomaterials here dispersed in a liquid.
Professor Nicolosi's new battery is based on what are called 2D materials, immensely strong but ultralight molecules that are only 1 atom thick. These nanomaterials in the lab's batteries are 1,000 times thinner than a human hair.
The amount of energy that you can store, it's the important objective that we're trying to hit. In the same volume of a mobile phone battery, we can already pack 8 times more energy. And this is a big change.
You're already packing 8 times more energy into the batteries that you're making here.
Yeah.
Tell me about the practical capabilities of this, because if you can store 8 times the energy, I mean, can you put that into an electric car?
Absolutely. In future, our next step will be to upscale everything we're doing from a coin cell to a large-scale battery production.
I am so impressed by what Valeria has shown me here today. We're talking about car batteries that could charge 8 times faster, or could hold 8 times the capacity on one charge. This could be a complete game changer. 8 times more capacity could eventually mean much smaller batteries and consequently far cheaper and faster charging electric cars. And batteries aren't the only technology that are changing the motoring game. Data, connectivity and the internet have touched every aspect of our lives, and these technologies are now coming to our cars. Tell me about the idea of connectivity. Why do cars need to connect to each other?
So connected vehicles are vehicles that are communicating certain levels of information. And that could be talking to traffic lights, that could be talking to the weather systems, so that they can manage your journey in a better way. They might say, well, there's congestion up the road, you might take an alternative journey, or there's an accident, I need to alert emergency services. And that's eCall actually, and that's coming in this year.
I suppose everybody thinks autonomous cars are very far in the future, but they're not quite as far as we think, are they?
No, they're practically here today. Look at the car companies. They say by 2021, they're going to have vehicles coming off their production line with levels of autonomy. And that's what, 2.5 years, 2 years away. The EU have said in the 2020s, that there are going to be autonomous vehicles on the road.
There's also potential for car sharing that you're looking into as well.
Absolutely. We look at trends that are happening and we see ownership numbers are coming down in particular areas and particular segments of society because there's a massive cost of buying a vehicle, and if you buy a vehicle and if it's sitting outside your house or sitting on part of the road for like 90% or 80% of the day, then what value are you getting out of it? If you are in a society where people are sharing the trips, and car sharing has been around for a long time, but the way the market is going is around mobility as a service.
And you can see the signs of change already. Car sharing services like GoCar and Yuko are now visible on our city streets. And there's a new Airbnb for cars called Fleet that will let you rent out your car when you aren't using it or hire your neighbours. These services could all lower the level of individual car ownership.
This is going to be the future, and we just have to make sure that that transition is done in a way that allows people of all parts of society, and it's quite important, I think, the socioeconomic benefits for all parts of society have to be realised. We can't just have electric vehicles for the rich. They have to be for all, and that's the challenge for government and for the private sector to make sure that happens.
John's talking about the possibility of individual car ownership being a thing of the past, or autonomous cars that drive themselves. And I suppose to a lot of people that might seem unlikely. But then 10 years ago, if you'd asked me, I might have thought that a shared bike scheme was unlikely. And now it's part of everyday life. It seems like things can change pretty fast. We are on the brink of a revolution. And the next few years are going to see a fundamental shift in how we drive. So better batteries are on their way, and the car of the future will be connected and intelligent in ways that are hard to imagine. But you could argue the car of the future is already here. This is the Hyundai Kona. It's the best-selling electric car in the country since its release at the start of this year. The Kona is evidence of the rapid progress that EVs are now making. And its success is based on one thing. You guessed it, range. There's 360 kilometres left on the battery at the moment, but when I started there was over 400 kilometres, so it's enough for me to drive from Dublin to Galway and back again without having to charge. That just opens up electric vehicle ownership to everyone, no matter how deep in the countryside you live. The demand for electricity that EVs will create is going to be a new challenge for our power grid. But the batteries in electric cars might just help to solve one of the grid's most pressing issues: storage. Supplying extra power at times of peak demand is one of the grid's key functions. But storing electricity at a large enough scale to do this is notoriously difficult. Back in the early 1970s, a massively ambitious power storage scheme was opened in the Wicklow Mountains that uses water and gravity. Turlock Hill is a pumped storage system built into the heart of a mountain. At times of high demand, the reservoir above drains water down through enormous generators to a lower lake. At night, when demand is low, the turbines go into reverse and pump the water back up to the mountaintop. With renewables being an increasingly important but variable source of our electricity, the need for power storage has never been greater, and it's possible that electric vehicles could help.
Back in the 1970s, when Turlock Hill was built, it was state-of-the-art because it took water from a lower reservoir, and in times of excess energy supply it would pump that water to a top reservoir, and then in times of energy need it would release that water again to power a turbine and create more electricity. And that's the kind of storage system we need now as we move to a more variable renewable energy system comprised of wind and solar. So when it's not windy and it's not sunny, we have this stored energy in the form of something like water, like Turlock Hill. Now Turlock Hill is still state-of-the-art, and places like Scotland are emulating it. Silver Mines in Tipperary is building something very similar, but the cost of doing this is astronomical. So what we need is to think of our electric vehicles as potential storage systems to store excess electricity and allow electric vehicle owners to feed that electricity back into the grid in times of need.
So you could actually use your electric vehicle as a battery for your house, so you could fill it all day with your solar and your wind, and then you could use it at night to power your home.
Yes, so some systems are proposing that an electric vehicle owner could make 60 to 70 euro a month if they were willing to give up some of their electricity in times of need. If, say, they didn't need a full battery for the trip they were making the next day. And for someone like me, that's roughly what I spend on charging my electric vehicle every month. So I could essentially offset my entire fueling costs if a system like this was in place.
Tomorrow's electric vehicles could work with the grid to help us switch to 100% renewable electricity. But that's tomorrow. What about today? When you talk to current EV owners, they all love their cars. And having driven 2 different EVs, I can see why. They might still be a bit costly up front, but the price of petrol and diesel is likely to rise. So in the long run, going electric will save you money. But it's also going to save our planet. It's clear that climate change has already started to affect us. So to me, it seems the time to go electric is now.